Hi guys. Thank you for joining me for what is going to be the last in a series of 7 days, 7 minutes. I'll do my best to keep this to 7 minutes, but it's not easy. Okay, how to deal with a big puncher when you're on the focus pads. First thing you're going to need to do is remove any jewellery. It's just a common sense thing. It can injure you and it can cut your pads. Get rid of any jewellery. Second thing you're going to need to do, this is really important, is a warm up. You should never take someone on the pads if you're cold. I see a lot of people sometimes warming the client up and then they don't go and warm themselves up and they go on the pads, which is utter madness. So don't, whatever you do, do that. Okay, so if I've got a quick question for you guys and you can answer by typing it back on the screen. Do you really think, just imagine that any client that you have is going to take their power down or slow down because you are not good enough on the pads? Do you think if they're paying you their hard-earned money, you can answer away on the screen if you want, does anyone seriously think that if I was your client, exactly, no way. If I was your client, there is not a chance in hell that I would slow down because you're not good enough on the pads. If you can't do it, I would just get another trainer. A few other people say nope as well on the screen. Yeah, we're all in agreement. That ain't going to happen. Okay, so if you've got this problem and you've got someone that is a really, really heavy puncher, and there are quite a few of them about, what you need to do is you can make a note of this afterwards, by all means, watch the replay, but there's a couple of things that you're going to need to get right. There are 4 mistakes that you're likely to potentially be making. The first one is the issue of range, setting your range. So the first thing you've got to do is get your client into range. Check their range on the jab. You do not need to check any other punch, because if the jab is correct, then everything should be correct, because you should move your pads into the right position. So you only need to check range on the jab. Now this is where people go wrong. If I'm the puncher and I throw my punch like this, I hope you can see this, and I throw my punch there, can you see my shoulder is forward? I'll do it from the other side as well. There, my shoulder is forward, there. This is where the punch is going to land. Now, if you check range with your client's shoulder flat, like this, when they come to punch, they're going to punch right through you, and this is going to blow your shoulder. So it's really important you check range at full range with the shoulder forward. Now, the second thing that's really important is that you're going to need 3 shock absorbers. It's absolutely vital that you have these 3 shock absorbers. Now, the first one is your arms, like this, okay? There's your arms. Can you see my position? Approximately 90 degrees there. That's roughly where they want to be. Now, be aware that this dot here can't be wider than my shoulder. If it is, can you see how I'm, if I go back a little, if it is, can you see how I'm going to get problems there with my shoulders? So they want to be here. You just need to be able to see through them, because people don't have 2 heads. You want the target to be close, like this. Now, the second shock absorber that you're going to need, and this one is just as important, I'll have to step back a little bit for this, is your stance. Can everyone see that? That is my stance. I see quite a lot of trainers, when they hold pads, doing this, and it's like, bloody hell, what do you think is going to happen? Newton's 3rd law of motion states every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Of course you're going to get knocked off your feet. It stands to reason. So you've got to have a good stance like this. Now, the next thing you're going to need for your shock absorbers, and this one's just as important, what you're going to do is you're going to lean forward slightly, like this. So you've got your shock absorber 1, 2, 3. Now what happens is when my big puncher punches me, I will then go vertical instead of starting vertical and ending up going backwards. And some of you, I'm sure, will have had that problem before. It's a simple fault to fall into. Now watch this with this lean. Someone else is commenting just there. It says, always telling mind this. Yes, quite right. Well done. Now the other thing as well is, when you do this, watch how I lose my legs as a shock absorber if I am pushed backwards. If I'm here in the correct position, that's okay. When I go to here, I'm still safe. When I go straight, I'll go back a little bit for this. When I go straight, my back leg goes straight. Sorry, when I go into hyperextension, my back leg goes straight and I lose my second shock absorber. So not only do I lose the body lean, I lose my legs. Everything then is coming through your arms, and this is the biggest problem that people have when they're doing this, that they end up like this on the pads because they've got a big, powerful punch on there. Now, the other thing that is a big mistake that people are going to make is not coaching the person that's on the pads. They're just holding the pads for them, just going, give me 10, do 10 burpees. Give me 20, do 10 burpees. Give me 30, do 10 burpees. Let me tell you something. Your client is clever enough to count for themselves. They can do that on a punch bag. They don't need you to count for them. What they need you to do is to coach them. Now, one little mistake that they'll often make, hopefully this camera can see this, when they're punching and they lean too far forwards like this, the knee is going to go over the toe like that. Now, what you can do then is you can coach them that what they need to be able to do is keep that knee behind the toe so they can come back like this. If they don't, imagine that you're punching at my screen now, so you can get out of your chair and punch at the screen. If you went 1, 2, and then you moved, and then I throw my punch back at you like this, back of the pad, all I do is little flick like this. If you're still too far forward, you're going to get hit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go 1, 2 back like this. And I'm going to tap at that front glove, so it's going to come across and tap there. Now, if the hand is too low, if they're leaning too forward, they get hit. So what they want to do is, and I'll need to go back again for this, they want to be able to do this like this, 1, 2, back. Instead of going 1, 2, and then if my knee is over my toe, all I can do is go up before I go back. So they're going to be slower. So you can catch them out with the speed drill like that. So you should be coaching the person that you're working with. Now, the other thing is meeting the punches. With a beginner, you should never meet punches, an absolute beginner, but they aren't the problem with this. With a beginner, with a heavy puncher, you will need to meet the punches with a little bit of resistance. What you're not going to do is flappy hands like this. It's not that kind of thing. You need to have, this is really important, you need to have your wrist straight here. Do you see that? My wrist must be straight there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the punch like this, but you're not meeting the punches. This is the clever bit. If you know anything about boxing, you're not meeting the punches because, say for example, if I'm throwing my jab like this and you're going to meet my punch, let me tell you something dead straight. If you can time my jab well enough that you can meet it with a pad, that's the first thing I need to work on because my jab is not good enough. If you can time my jab ain't good enough. I need to work on it. You should never be able to time my jab. It should be so good that you can't even tell when it's going to come. That's what I'd be working towards. Now, when you meet the punches, if they are headshots, this part of the body, all punches will come through this part. So I'm moving my hands there and I'm relaxing, yeah? But boom, 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 boom. This is where you'll meet them. You don't meet the punch. You meet to this part on the body. Similarly, body hooks, you meet into this part here because they're going to come in lower. So all punches can be met to there. But what you need to do is put a bit of resistance in, but not so much that it causes the person's hand and wrist to have a problem like this. So we've got to be careful, and it takes a little bit of practice. One thing that people always ask as a question as well is, what about different heights? It's a dead good question, really good question indeed. Now, you don't have a problem so long as your elbow isn't higher than your shoulder. So you can work with someone who is precisely this much higher than you. The centre of the palm of your hand to your shoulder, that person can be that much higher than you and you can work with them safely. However, if your elbow is higher than your shoulder, you're going to have to go forward like this to do that, and they are going to have to come down a little bit to work with you. That's when the height difference becomes a problem in terms of working with someone tall. Now, working with someone shorter, this is much more of a problem because, and you think, oh no, I'm worried about a big guy. It's the little guy that's going to injure you potentially, or the little lady. And what happens is you go down like this. Do you see that as you bring the pad up, you see that there's a gap appearing here? See the wrist position I've got? Now, I don't want to be punched like that. That's going to cause me a real problem. So what I've got to do, if that happens there, go down with your legs. Don't just drop the pads. Please don't be lazy. What I want you to do, in fact, is get a bit of paper and put it in there and remind yourself, do not drop pads. And you've got to pinch that and keep that against your wrist like that. One thing just to summarise just quickly, oh, and another thing I nearly forgot. When you're working with someone that's throwing hooks, this is really important. You're going to move your pads further forward like that, but you've got to keep a bend in your arm when you do so. If you lock your arm out like this so that it's straight, when someone punches, that's going to jam your elbow and cause you real difficulties, real problems. So what I want you to do is to keep a bend. Now what you're going to do is you're going to grip here, but you're going to relax this joint. not completely, but when someone punches, that pad is going to move away like that, and they're punching on a short lever against a long lever from you, so it's going to cause a problem. Don't try and resist it because it's going to hurt your elbow. Let that just go like that. All you've got to do is bring it back in time for the next one. Made that mistake before, now need an operation. I'm sorry, mate. I wish I'd been able to show you this before. So you can really cause yourself a serious injury. Someone there commenting, saying that they've made a mistake and they need an operation to correct that. Do be careful of that. Now, another thing that happens sometimes is when people punch, they kind of hook the pad off your hand and it flies away. This is a common thing when you're using PU pads, polyurethane pads, that rarely occurs with leather pads because leather pads are grippier, if you want to know a bit of difference there. PU pads are a bit cheaper though. And the reason that happens is really, really straightforward. They're punching the wrong part of the pad. They're hitting here. And what happens is they're not really looking at the dot, so you need to coach them and tell them hit the dot. Because if that pad is getting wrenched off your hand, it's because they're punching about 1.5 inches too far down on that pad. So what you've got to do is you've got to make sure they punch on the dot. Now, just coming back to your pads, pads should have a yellow dot because this is what people are looking at. You don't need a black pad with a dark red dot because it's hard to see. If you've got your dot and it's the wrong colour, paint it yellow. Yellow gloss paint, that'll do it. Now the other thing that's important with pads is, you see this dot here? It's got to be in the centre of the palm of my hand. Because when I get punched, I want this to happen. I don't want this to happen, which would happen if this dot is too high. If your pad's got a dot on that's too high, just unstitch it, get some yellow gloss paint and paint it around there. A comment come in and it says, what does it say on my pad? My pad says Yoda. That's my nickname in boxing. Everyone calls me Yoda. Hardly anyone knows me as Andy. So that's why I've got Yoda written on and not Andy. I can't spell my own name, believe it or not. So what we've got to have is we've got to have the pad with the dot right in the centre there. Someone else asking, what is that in the corner? Wait 1 second. That there is the Boxercise footwork training system thing. No, the thing on the floor. The thing on the floor, I don't know if you can see them. They're just some medals and stuff like that that I got when I was competing. My wife prefers me not to keep them in the house because they take up a bit much space, so I keep them here in the office. Okay, final word on this thing. Before we finish, don't learn off YouTube. Don't go to YouTube and learn how to hold pads. It's mental to do that. If someone is going to pay you to actually hold the pads for them, then you need to actually be trained. Whether you get trained by ourselves or by the amateur boxing associations or whoever is up to you. But make sure you get trained by someone who actually understands. Now, if they don't go through them same 4 things, range, shock absorbers, coaching, and how to meet them punches correctly. If they don't do that, they're not the right person to train you. So just vote with your feet and don't go back there. Because if all they do is just say, hold the pads for this guy, it's like you're getting injured. So just make sure that that happens, because the physiotherapy can be expensive. Best of luck, guys. Does anyone else have any other questions? I've had a few questions pop up on the screen. Any other questions at all about holding pads, especially for a big puncher or for different heights? Has anyone got a question there? Well, this is the last one of the pericasts. I am going to do them on a weekly basis, but they've taken up quite a lot of my time and just doing these things. So this is the end of the 7 series. So I wish you all well, guys. Very best of luck. If you want to find out about getting trained by us, just Google Boxercise. You'll find us and you'll see us there. Peace out. Best of luck with it, guys. And I hope it works well for you and you don't get injured or your clients.